Welcome to another episode of Course Heading. Course Heading has in fact returned after a long break with the holidays and stuff, and with two shows going on. It's been busy for the both of us. So we're here to play catch up. In this week's episode of Course Heading, Bill and I are going to be jumping in and discussing just more broadly the first 5 episodes of Discovery. Before we get into that, Bill, how you doing this morning?
Doing really well. Excited to talk about Discovery. We have done some Trek Live since season 4 began, but we kind of steer clear of allowing, the new stuff to sort of take hold of those conversations, and you leave this space to do that. And
yeah.
Really looking forward to diving in, talking about how we're feeling about the season so far at kind of I don't know what the percentage is, but we're a decent way into it now. 5 of the 13 episodes under our belts. Looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, even just hearing season 4 just feels so crazy to me.
Insane.
1 through 3 felt still kind of new, but this is 4 just feels established, and because when you think about other season 4s in the past, you just it's just unbelievable.
yeah season 4 of Deep Space Nine and Voyager, you're at the point with Worf and 7 and Enterprise is the end of the show. So yeah, we're into the sort of heart and soul of what Discovery I think is going to wind up being at the end of the day, when people think of it in hindsight when it's all over.
Yeah,
we're kind of in the thick and thin of the core of that show. It is great when you think about it. Feels like yesterday that the show was like a concept, and yet to arrive, and people speculating about what it was going to be about and when it was set and what the whole thing was going to be. And here we are in 5 episodes into season 4. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. I think we should just dive into it. Let's do it.
Yeah. What are your kind of overall, extremely broad level, like, are you happy with it? What are your overall impressions so far?
I'm pretty happy with it. I've talked to Bill about a little bit about this off air, but for me, this season has been such a welcome change to what we've kind of seen from Discovery before. It felt like at the beginning of the season is like, I felt kind of like, oh, here we go again with just a bigger problem, huge kind of concept and things that they're going to have to solve, threat that they're going to have to solve. But to this point, it's really been episodic. Obviously, they're trying to figure out this bigger issue throughout the episodes, but the episodes have been more about just these one-off little problems that they're solving, instead of like, we're not solving the burn again. This is like down in the nitty-gritty. And then the other major thing that I'll touch on at the start is Burnham. Burnham feels like a captain. She's doing captain things. She's doing voiceovers with her captain's log. She's orchestrating just this not simple, but just this evac mission that feels more simple and more down to earth.
Traditional Star Trek.
Traditional Star Trek kind of stories. So I'm really loving the season so far.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think for my money, I think the best thing that the show maybe has done so far is make Burnham the captain. I feel like that has sort of allowed the show to settle into a comfortable groove. One of the things that can be said about the show, whether it's a positive or a negative, can obviously depend on your perspective. But each season is sort of, up till this point, marked by like a slightly different tone at the top of the command chain. Lorca with season 1 kind of creates its own tone, and Pike in season 2, and then season 3 with Saru and Coming to the Future and kind of being out of place and out of time. This season, it feels settled. Yeah, putting Burnham into the captain's chair and having had that journey kind of play out and culminate into that move and that change has really allowed the show to find its footing in a way. And I've been a fan of the show since day one. I've loved each of the seasons. I'm a huge fan of Discovery, and it's growing. My affection for it has strengthened over time. But season 4 to me has the hallmark of the season so far has been the comfort level of everything. The characters feeling in sort of locked in, and with the actors feeling very very comfortable playing those roles. Everybody feels very settled and at home in their places, and headlined by having Sonequa, not only as the lead of the show but as the lead of the ship, with kind of no questions asked. And I totally agree with what you said. Like she feels like she is a captain. Like it doesn't even you can't even say she feels like she is the captain. And conducts herself in every way you would want, the Star Trek captain of the moment too. In each of these episodes, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's examples like littered throughout the season, but in the episode, the examples, I feel like season 1 Burnham would have handled that situation a little bit differently.
Yes.
And now we get this more mature and more just well fleshed out captain in Burnham. So it's just cool to see the arc that she's been on, not just this season but the show.
The show, I think you're right. When you think about Burnham from sort of the get go of the series, I think you're definitely right that I think she probably makes different decisions down on that planet in the examples during the evacuation. But even at the beginning of this season, I think as a seasonal arc, even you think about the first episode of the season, Kobayashi Maru, the big sort of meaty discussion at the end of that episode is between the Federation president and Burnham about having to make the tough decision and not be able to save everybody, and being able to operate under those unfortunate but sometimes unavoidable circumstances. I don't know that she would have made the same decision in episode 1 of season 4, let alone Vulcan Hello. With deciding to leave, grant that prisoner's wish to stay behind and sort of atone for his past decisions. So yeah, I agree. I think not only for the series but for the season, we're seeing an arc for Burnham's character play out in a way that's been satisfying. An obvious one now that we're kind of talking about it holistically with these first 5 episodes, as opposed to like doing episodic reviews. If we're talking about like big things that have happened in this first chunk of episodes, I think right at the front of mind is what is going on with Tilly. Tilly's been a staple of this show. She's a core character going back to maybe not the very, very beginning. She's not on the Shenzhou at the very first couple of episodes, but right from the beginning of Context is for Kings at the beginning of season 1, she's there, and she's a critical part of the show. And kind of in the dark right now. We don't totally know what her status is. She's left the ship. She's going to teach at Starfleet Academy.
Yep.
This season has definitely charted that course to some extent. We kind of opened in season 4 with her clearly kind of being uncomfortable in her role, and going through some self-doubts about where she belongs and what she should be doing. She's trying to get outside of her comfort zone and find new things to do, and that ultimately leads to her going on this training mission with Starfleet cadets with the newly reopened Starfleet Academy, and ultimately deciding that maybe her best place is as a teacher, working with these cadets because of her unique perspective on her upbringing and being from an earlier time in Starfleet's history and all these things that Discovery allows the characters to be. But what I mean by like kind of in the dark is I think that the show, if you read online and you read interviews, they're not saying she's gone, that she's done.
Yeah,
she's gonna be back.
Still in the credits.
But in what capacity? She's not in the credits of episode 5.
Yeah.
But the idea is she's still there. She's still, we haven't seen the last of her. But is this a road towards her being, you know, a recurring character, a far less prominent member of the show, or is this a bump along the way and she'll be back in some different way? You know? How do you feel about what they're doing with Tilly?
I don't know. I'm not sure what the future is for that character. I think I know that they were laying some seeds at the beginning of the season, but for me, this kind of started with season 3. Like, she got a chance to be, because she's yes. always been a career officer. She's on the road, on the track to the captain's chair, but she kind of yes. got that in season 3 with Saru bumping her up, and she got to see and experience what it would be like to be an officer, be on the bridge all the time. She's not in the lab anymore. She's not, doing that type of work. And so I think it could have went one or two ways. It could have went, this is definitely for me. This is what I want to do, but or the other way, which it seems like they chose to go that way with the character. I'm fine with it. I think it's interesting to see. We get a lot of career officers and a lot of coverage with career officers and wanting them to work their way up to the bridge crew. As much as I'd like to see that, it's also just as interesting to see, hey, this isn't for me, and there's some very dramatic and stuff that happened in a specific episode here in the first season, but this season, the fourth season, which I really like and I thought was very well done. It definitely it fits the character. I don't think it feels really out of left field if they decide to take a break from the character. I think in Star Trek the character's never really dead, so I think they did right by the character. I think there's worse ways to if it ends up being the final we see of Tilly, I think it's totally fine.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings myself. Like,
we're not like a Jadzia Dax situation here where she just gets.
Yeah. No, and it does feel organic to me. Like, I've seen some folks kind of knock it for feeling out of left field or contrived. I don't feel like that. I think they've done a nice job of charting her relationship with her mother, and when she talks to Burnham at the end of episode 4 and tells her what her decision is and why she wants to do what she's doing, that all connects for me. I think that feels real and organic and makes sense. I think the opportunity that she had at the end of season 3 and the way that went would obviously leave a mark. She's given a chance as the first officer. She's put in that command position in episode 11, I think it was, when the ship gets captured. That obviously left a mark and would probably make somebody reevaluate, like, is this really what I want? Is captaincy and command something that is for me? And it's perfectly human to decide, especially a young person like Tilly, to reevaluate her career path and what she wants to do. And people do that every single day in 21st century life. They get exposed, they come out of college thinking they're going to do one thing, and they wind up doing another. And I'm sure that would happen in Starfleet Academy graduate situations just as often. So I have no problem there. I think the show maybe lulled me into a little bit of a sense of security. I remember, kind of like we were talking about at the very beginning, it doesn't feel like that long ago. The show's new and kind of hatching out of the egg. And one of the things that was sort of teased to us in the very, very early days is, like modern TV, maybe, some of these characters might not be safe, and some characters might die and get killed in ways that the old school Star Trek shows just wouldn't do. And I think the show kind of lulled me into a sense of security that over the last few years, that other than some characters being left behind when they go to the future, and Lorca, like, there's been very few cases of, like, our real core main characters leaving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've lost Ash Tyler, who stayed behind, and obviously Pike and Spock, they were all going to stay behind. People that were part of season 2, season 1.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been a great deal of that. So this maybe
Yeah, because
yeah, I'm not used to that. I mean, all the Star Trek shows have
Yeah.
off characters here or there, but this felt sudden and kind of out of nowhere in the sense that, like, from a production standpoint, like when Terry Farrell was going to leave Deep Space Nine, that was telegraphed. Like, if you were watching the show in 1998, you knew that was coming. You couldn't avoid it.
But was that from the
like,
press talking about it, or
yes,
was it?
Yeah. If you had a TV guide, and if you, were just, if Twitter was a thing in 1998, you would have naturally absorbed that information.
Yeah.
In the months leading up to it. You knew that was happening. So these things tended to build. Like, we knew Jennifer Lean was leaving Voyager before it happened. So there was always like a telegraphing of these things. It was very rare to have like a true bang. Like, when I pushed play on episode 4, All Is Possible, I did not know at the end of the episode that was going to happen, and I'm still kind of reeling from
during the episode. You didn't think she was gonna stay?
I thought she was going to stay. Like, I didn't watch that episode thinking, oh, she's gone. Like, they're gonna completely shake the character to her foundation and shuffle her off to another role, and she's gonna leave the ship. I did not see that coming. So it genuinely surprised me, and I'm still sort of, like I said, just kind of catching up with that and trying to figure out how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Just because I love the character, and I think she's such a cornerstone of the show and a critical piece of the ensemble, or at least has been to this point. So.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense the way that they did it. I think they did a nice job of charting it and building it to that point, but. I'm going along for the ride and kind of waiting to see how it all plays out to decide how I feel about what that does to the show as a whole.
Okay.
Other characters. Saru, obviously, we opened the season and he's on Kaminar.
We didn't know if we were going to get Saru back.
True. Yeah. I think we were pretty confident.
I don't know.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. I don't know. The whole thing that you just talked about with the characters, it really surprised me. I don't know. I didn't feel that way. The way that I felt with keeping characters together was that I wanted to keep them together because they were they had gone through such a traumatic. That we jumped into the future. I was worried that they were gonna break him up, but I don't know. I think they did a decent job. But with Saru, there's a change in the character that is very interesting to me. Before, he always was, reaching for the stars and all these things, like he wanted to do, but now it's like he's almost, anytime anything happens, he's always just reaching back for his little Kaminar pip, which is very interesting. So,
yeah, I think the reconnection to Kaminar for him is huge. Going through all those years of having to deal with the fact that he couldn't go home and that it was not available to him, and it was sort of this forbidden, that he couldn't go back there because in the 23rd century it was a pre-war, Prime Directive protected society, and now he's in the future and able to kind of have open lines of communication. He can go back anytime he wants, and he has connections and friendships and people he cares about there that he can be pulled back to. So he's sort of in a different place. He's offered a command at the beginning of the season and decides to forego that and come back to Discovery and be there for Burnham. I think that says something about where I think he's called more to his Discovery family than to the captain's chair or to Starfleet.
Yeah.
In the more
Clearly,
broad sense,
yeah.
like he's coming back for Burnham and for his Starship family than to be in the chain of command and to have an assignment and just be a Starfleet officer. I think his priorities are different now, and I think that shows in Doug Jones' performance in the way that he interacts with the crew. And he's amazing. I think Doug Jones is crazy good, as he has been all along. But this season, I think he's especially a knockout every time he's on screen.
I would have to agree. Yeah, which I wasn't even sure, like, to be in this season with. I wasn't even sure if he was going to come back on the ship, or if he was going to have to be able to, deal with stuff on his home world, and so yeah.
It was definitely one of the open questions coming into season 4. Like, what would his role be? How would he operate? Obviously he's not burned as the captain of Discovery. He's a captain. How does that? Where is he going to fit in? But I think they found a way to credibly put him back into the fold, make him feel at home, and like he belongs in that moment, at least where he is. I think it all makes sense. I have no problem at all with what they're doing with Saru. I love his budding relationship with Navarre President Tarina in episode 4 during those negotiations. I think those scenes are really strong during the sort of political, diplomatic negotiations with the Vulcans and the Romulans. Saru's a standout there. And there's some really good scenes in the examples this week, I think, with the sort of guest star scientists.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Another big sort of thing, especially in the early part of the season, it's kind of maybe been a little less prominent in these last couple episodes, is the Adira and Gray storyline, with Gray being using the Star Trek Picard technology from Dr. Soong.
Cool callback.
The same way that they brought Picard back. They'll call back there to and some Deep Space Nine terminology with some of the rituals that Jadzia Dax went through to sort of reconnect with old hosts, to allow Gray to be corporeal again, and to have to be able to interact. It essentially allows the character to interact with other characters besides you. Yeah. Do you connect with that story? Do you find that interesting? How are you feeling about that? Where that's going with the Trill stuff?
I'm liking it. I think it's a great callback. It's a big again, the whole Trill stuff is such a big sci-fi concept. It's still so interesting. Yeah, I guess I sometimes I have a hard time like working through, because like you can bring back and I think it was Duran or whoever the and but I'm just interested in like why did they choose to why did they choose to do that? Because could they do that with? I just have a bunch of questions, I guess.
Sure.
Could they have done that with all the hosts? Is it because? Yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of open-ended questions that I'm still intrigued with. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to me.
There's a lot of interesting things to explore there, and depending on the level of interest with the Trill stuff for that member of the audience, I think will sort of determine the viewer's level of interest and patience with that storyline. But I'm into it. I love Dax and all the Trill stuff. I love the way that it's connected to, I mean, I guess in theory, maybe they could do it for previous hosts. I always, especially this season, the thing that really kind of grounds it in Star Trek reality is in that Deep Space Nine episode Facets, when Jadzia Dax goes through the Gentara and gets to connect with her previous hosts, gets to get to like sort of embody other characters on the show, and Jadzia gets to interact with them. Curzon embodies Odo and wants to stay with Odo, wants to continue to exist as this sort of Odo hybrid. So that sort of establishes that through this kind of a ritual, if this is unlocked, there is a possibility for, through Star Trek stuff, science fiction stuff, for previous hosts to be a more permanent fixture in a sense. And then if you can logically leap to using technology like Picard, Soong stuff, maybe that can be made permanent and
Sure.
and more corporeal. So I think it's done some interesting things for the Adira character. I think they are going to have some tough realizations coming now that Gray is an individual again and has a life to live. You know, the thing that I kind of see coming, my assumption is that, you know, Gray's going to want to do some things and make some choices that are maybe not consistent with what Adira thought would happen. I think that's the clear sort of dramatic path that's kind of laid out for that storyline, and I'm here for it. I'm interested in it, and you know, for obvious reasons, the representation aspect of it is important. I think, you know, having characters like that represented on the show, and have, you know, young people see those individuals, you know, just the way Star Trek has always done when it's been good. You know, put these characters on level playing fields and operating as, you know, fully fleshed out individuals who aren't defined by the color of their skin or their gender or their gender identity is a hallmark, and I think it's important to for Star Trek to continue to push that forward, and they are this season and Discovery as a whole. Yeah. I think this storyline is an important part of that. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the sort of mystery of the season? You kind of alluded to having some hesitations, maybe with having another giant, like, sort of impending threat of the moment being the push. Do you feel like, you kind of alluded at the beginning that you feel like the episodes are doing a good job so far of being episodic and maybe not diving too deeply into being defined by this big threat they have to solve? But there were some developments this week. It's obviously, you saw trailers, you knew it's an anomaly that's, you know, moving through space and it's causing problems for planets and things in its path. In this most recent episode, there were some developments with it potentially being not naturally occurring. It moves around, it disappears and reappears. How are you feeling about what that is? And
mixed feelings for sure. They typical Discovery. They always do a decent job of keeping you interested and not solving it with the first episode. But what I would like to see, this is my kind of big theory that I think would be cool, is don't solve it in a season. I know a lot of modern TV says you have to solve the main plot line in a season or an episode, but why can't we make this a 2-episode thing? I think, again, I also don't want it to get dragged out, but I think we've seen Discovery be able to keep a storyline going along and have it feel natural and still keep it fresh and interesting over a long period of time. So I think that would be cool to have at an actual true I think 90s era season finale where nothing is wrapped up. Nothing is wrapped up. Whereas before, it felt like there was obviously some things that haven't been, you know, tied up in a bow, but for the most part, it's been the main thing. So I would love to see that. And I think we still don't know a whole heck of a lot. So I think that could be done. And I feel like sometimes in Discovery, a lot of information gets thrown at us so fast, so why not save that information and just sprinkle it on with 2 seasons? And to be honest, I'm not sure how long Discovery's going to go, but you know, I think that would be cool to be able to push that whole idea through 2 seasons.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, which is interesting because a lot of us were like, oh, we want serialization, and then once we got it, we're like, well, maybe we want the episodic back. And now I think Discovery has done a pretty good job of balancing out a little bit of both. But just changing the format maybe would be cool. But as far as the anomaly goes, mixed feelings about it. But I'm interested so far. So it's doing a decent job.
I think the big thing that I hope that they continue on with from season 3, I think one of the best things they did with season 3 was in true sort of TOS fashion. They had a twist at the end of it, just the way that a lot of the mysteries of TOS were not what you thought they were. Like it was never quite simple. It was more complex. It was more shades of gray than it was a bad guy or it's something. It's an evil person hiding in a nebula, pulling controls and causing bad and for bad things' sake. I hope that wherever it goes, there's an interesting twist that is more morally complicated than just a bad guy. That's my sort of number one wish. But I would agree with you that if they could, if it makes sense to extend it beyond one season and have it continue to be the sort of mystery that's pulling the series together, because I think my favorite thing about this season, as it has been all along, I think Discovery's done a good job of this as a whole, especially the further away I get from earlier seasons and think about the episodes. They do a good job of mixing serialization with episodic adventures. But this season especially, we've had a space station in distress that like a go save the scientists on the space station. We've had go into an anomaly and figuring out what the heck is going on. In the second episode, we have a murderous renegade criminal that we have to go chase down, and there's a sleeper ship with refugees, and there's Starfleet cadets on a training mission gone awry, and an evacuation of a planet with
simple setups.
It's classic Star Trek stories.
They're
very traditional Star Trek stories told through the Discovery lens with this overarching thing pulling it together, and some B and C plots that are exploring the characters and diving into them. And I'm all for that. And the more space that allows for those kinds of stories to be told, I'm fully in favor of, because it's really allowing, again, along with Burnham being in the captain's chair, like I was talking about earlier, I think it's allowed the show to really settle into a groove and a comfort zone. I think your suggestion is an apt one, and don't feel compelled to like rush it to a conclusion and to arbitrarily finish it. If it needs more space and more time and it can sustain itself for more than a season, let it.
Yeah, because it's because we've got another show, on the drawing board that's going to be more episodic, and so I think there's going to be a need for that serialization moving forward. So
absolutely. And the other thing is, I think, like you were concerned with, like you kind of told me off air right off the bat after the first episode, you like many people, maybe have a slight reservation of, does every season have to have this ginormous thing?
Yeah.
And maybe an answer to that is, instead of creating a new large threat every season to kind of create this pull, this thing that has to be solved, have it be kind of one thing that is pulling the series together, as opposed to kind of hitting the reset button with the problem of the season. That might be a bit of a solution that allows for them to have their cake and eat it too. Tell these episodic stories, allow for space for that, but also have this more pressing thing that takes more time and gives a
like
more
Voyager.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're stranded in the Delta Quadrant, but they've got some episodic things that
Yeah, and like big major threats are not new to Star Trek. The Doomsday Machine was a pretty big effing problem, and in TOS they just resolved. It was resolved in one episode. What Discovery is doing is it's taking a problem, it's taking a threat like that and not solving it in an hour or in a single adventure. It's extending it. It's a bigger thing that takes more time and more resources and more cooperation and all the things that Discovery's about to get to a solution. So I think you're onto something with, maybe instead of just resolving it and in season 5, hopefully we get a season 5, finding a new one to bring about. Just keep this going and allow this to be like an ongoing thing that is going to take time.
Yeah.
What's your favorite episode of the season?
All is possible, I think.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. I really I don't know. There's some other great episodes in this season so far. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the. I love. I mean, there's like I feel like there's an A, B, and C in a lot of these episodes, but like the two main plot points, the stuff with Tilly, with the cadets, with managing expectations, but there's also some great stuff with learning to trust each other and that dynamic, and because of where you've come from and your upbringing. I love that. That's so good. But the stuff with Burnham and Saru, the politics stuff is just so good and so on point for what I feel we need um,
Mm-hmm.
in that kind of landscape. I'll try to keep it vague, but yeah, that's and it. Yeah, that's my favorite episode of the season. I know there's some really good ones, some classic Star Trek types of episodes, but that for me just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I love it. So, and I'm trying to not let the public opinion sway my opinion
Don't.
on an episode, because I know that's especially hard for me on new Trek. So yeah. What about you?
I think Anomaly is my favorite so far. The episode 2. I think that's the episode that it doesn't have the clear and succinct like ABC plot structure that I think these last handful have had. Like where you can clearly maybe debate which one goes to A, B, and C, like where you slot them, but clearly like 3 kind of tracks going at one time. I think Anomaly does a really good job of creating situations where the entire cast gets actively used. They're all involved, but it's all sort of cohesively together. You have Book and Stamets on both ship in the Anomaly, trying to figure out what's going on, getting the data, dealing with their own personal stuff. Saru coming back to the ship and reintegrating and having those conversations with Burnham, and that kicks off there. I think Tilly's kind of reeling from what happened in episode 1 and dealing with her emotional um, struggles that are going to lead to the decision she makes in the episode you talked about. You know, Adira is getting closer to having Gray. That the body's thing is getting closer to becoming a reality, and she has a good scene with Tilly in the science lab where Tilly snaps at her and or snaps at them, and there is a bit of conflict bubbling there. Um, and even a character like Bryce gets to sort of come up with the solution of the episode with the windsurfing and getting Bookship out of there. It's got great special effects with the zero G effect of getting hit with that gravitational the gravitational anomaly hitting the ship. So I think that's the one that hit the most Star Trek vibes for me, with kind of checking all the boxes of cool science fiction stuff, big character moments, some emotional punch with the Saru stuff and the Tilly and Adira stuff, and getting to see Burnham fresh into the captain's chair, really dealing with a crisis. So that's probably it for me. But I've loved quite a few of them, and I'm fond of all of them so far. Anything we haven't touched on that you kind of want to? The boy. Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about we have to cover. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That is a major dramatic swing to do something that drastic to that character, and I feel like that was a risk, and it's continuing to evolve. I think I've seen some folks who kind of wish Book's character wasn't kind of mired in such trauma because he's, especially in season 3, he's so alive and so a shot of adrenaline for the crew, and uh, he's definitely a different flavor this season because of everything going on. But it's in keeping with what the show is about. Discovery as a whole has really been an exploration of sort of trauma and the way out of that and the way to continue to fight through that and connections and are the way to fight through these sorts of things. And as we live through our lives in the 21st century, it seems like kind of taking one giant blow after another in our own existence here. So it's reflecting on us and dealing with living through some challenging times, and so that feels in keeping, and it did definitely up the dramatic ante, I think, for the show, and it gave Book a lot of big things to play, and uh, in episodes like Anomaly and Choose to Live, when he's on Navarre and gets the mind meld, and he's they're doing a good job, I think, of creating situations where he's kind of slowly working back to a point where he's able to operate individual. Like coming right out of it in the first couple of episodes, right after it happened, he's obviously like debilitated by the grief and the trauma.
Cannot function.
A fully functional person. He's really battling, and that mind meld gives him some closure when he connects with his nephew and gets a little piece of okayness from that experience, but it's not fixed. He's still talking to Culber in episode 4, and he's still dealing with grief in 5 and dealing with the difficulty. So
it's ever evolving, though. Yeah,
it's evolving.
That's what I love. Is it's not just a snap of the finger. Oh, he's okay. We're just gonna keep going and keep on trucking. It's like him working through some trauma, like you said.
Right. Exactly, and I think that's given the character some really cool stuff, and the actor's amazing. I think David Ajala is a home run casting decision, and has really brought a ton to the ensemble. He's great with all the characters, but especially with Burnham. He's got great scenes with her, and gives Burnham a kind of similar to. I always kind of harken it back to Sisko in the sense that with Sisko, unlike a lot of the other captains, we had that side of him with Jake and Cassidy, a more domesticated side of life from the captain, the lead of the show. And I think having Book and having that relationship for Burnham to play off of gives us a similar vibe with Burnham's character. It's not just the person on duty on the bridge and in the ready room and walking the corridors. There's another side to this person, a more letting the hair down, living a more recognizably off-duty life. And Book has really, I think, allowed that character to breathe in that sense.
Yeah, but I always thought that, at least coming into the season, that Book always was going to have Burnham that connection. But he could just interact with other characters just as well.
The Stamets stuff in Anomaly is a huge part of why I love it.
And with Culber, too,
Culber, yeah. I think he's a flexible and dynamic character that can sustain variations of things to do. He's not one dimensional in any sense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Culber as a whole. Like there's some really ominous stuff going on there too. I mean, I think in this last episode, in the examples, he has there's one of my favorite scenes of the season between him and Kovic, David Cronenberg.
Yeah,
character.
Bringing him back was cool. Yeah.
Yes, he was in 4 and 5. He's got a scene with Tilly in 4, and he's got a scene with Culber in 5.
Yeah. And
Culber dealing with being overworked, and I remember now it's kind of making sense. I remember I think it was the Star Trek Day event. He was on the Discovery panel, and he talked about his performance this season. In some ways, connecting with he was thinking a lot about people who work in the medical field these days who are overworked and exhausted, whether it's in a hospital or at a testing site or.
We're definitely getting that.
Definitely getting that. People who are just exhausted emotionally and physically, and just feel like they're through the ringer,
fatigued,
and, constantly on the go and dealing with really difficult things. And dealing with their own trauma in that sense, and that Culber's definitely dealing with that. He's got his own obvious history with this is a guy like Kovac said, your file is amazingly generic for somebody who died and came back. You're obviously not dealing with everything that kind of comes along with that. So I think they're doing some cool things there, and I think there's more to come with that character and those struggles.
Yeah, covered a lot there.
We did. I think we touched on a lot of characters, a lot of stories, a lot of subplots. There's, like you said, 5 episodes is a lot to cover. I'm sure there are big, giant things that we missed.
Yeah.
But we're going to continue to talk about it. I think we're going to continue to kind of do them in bunches here on Core Setting. With the holiday season kind of being here, I don't know that we'll be able to do week to week. But in a few weeks, I think we'll come back and maybe cover the next 3 or 4.
Yep.
And then the last batch at the end of the season, and maybe do another kind of full season review.
Retrospective.
When all said and done.
Yep. Should be fun. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you want to keep the discussion going, there's always a great discussion on our Discord. Obviously, Twitter is definitely a good spot, but Discord is just as good to have positive discussions. Because on Twitter, sometimes they can get into the negative territory, but with Discord, it's generally on the positive side of things. But
on our server, at least.
Yes, on our server. Yes. Again, I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, everybody.